As he said in his introduction, he is leading the work package, which houses this particular activity that we are implementing in Ethiopia. And Rick has been a colleague and a mentor for quite some time now, since the days of PIM. And we are very, very happy to have him here. Nick, the floor is yours.
Okay, great. Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak here. I think what I'd like to do is try to provide a little bit of background on sort of what's going on within Rethinking Food Markets that's not fascinating. And in particular, I'm going to talk about Work Package 1, which is on global value chains. That's part of Rethinking Markets, but it's the part that includes the Sesame study. But let me take a step back and talk about why Rethinking Food Markets is important. And so as Rob mentioned earlier, agriculture is obviously extremely important. At a global level, it accounts for 20% of GDP, of income, of production. It accounts for about half of employment. So across the entire globe, about half of the 7 billion people are working in agriculture. And it accounts for about 1/3 of global greenhouse gas emissions. That's the GHG, greenhouse gases. So it's also important in terms of climate change and working to reduce the emissions of greenhouse gases. And obviously we have tens of millions of people entering the workforce every year. Agriculture is an important source of employment, particularly in South Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa. However, there are, as we're all aware, weaknesses and inefficiencies in value chains in agricultural markets. And we need to work to improve those in order to create employment, in order to create sustainable livelihoods, and improve quality of life in general. And we think that making food markets more efficient, making them more inclusive, making them more sustainable are all important objectives towards reaching that goal.
It's working. You have to move the person.
Okay, great. So within Rethinking Food Markets, you've heard the discussion of mention of work packages. So we have essentially 4, sometimes 5 work packages. And these are the basic themes of each one. There are different research areas. So work package 1 is focused on global value chains. In practical terms, that means crops that are produced for export. And within Work Package 1, we have 4 or 3.5 case studies: coffee in Honduras, shrimp in Bangladesh, sesame in Ethiopia, and the half is a smaller study focused on fruits and vegetables in Uzbekistan. Now, Work Package 2 is similar, also looking to improve specific value chains, but it is focused on commodities that are produced and consumed in the same country. So domestic products, mostly food products. And so the case studies are dairy in Uganda, grains, including beans in Honduras, and fruits and vegetables in Nigeria. So these are all domestically marketed commodities which face similar but slightly different problems and issues. Work Package 3 is looking at sort of services and activities that take place across different value chains. So if you want to study credit or logistics, for example, those are not confined to a specific commodity, a specific value chain, they cut across. And so Work Package 3 is looking at these cross-cutting services that are very important in value chains, logistics and finance, and we're working in Bangladesh, Nigeria, and Uganda on those topics. Now, Work Package 4 is a little bit different. It doesn't involve field research. It is sort of an attempt to bring together and make available information that is useful for researchers and policymakers regarding agricultural marketing. So KISM is an important part of that, but there are other components as well. So this is sort of trying to gather and disseminate information about agricultural marketing solutions, inclusive business models, and things like that. It also includes some meta studies, reviews of important topics within agricultural marketing, and some simulation studies where we look at, what would happen if, for example, we could improve sesame yields by 20% and we could reduce the marketing margins by 10%. How would that affect the overall economy? How would that affect participants in the value chain? So that's gives you an idea about Work Package 4. Okay, so let me just talk a little bit about why global value chains are different. What's important and what's interesting about them. So one is that they are kind of promising because they can be more remunerative. They can pay better. They can generate more income often than producing domestically produced crops. In addition, you have the potential for expanding production without pushing the price down. The sesame price is mostly determined by international markets. So if Ethiopia expanded production by 30%, it probably wouldn't affect the global price of sesame. On the other hand, if Ethiopia expanded maize production by 30%, you can be sure that the domestic price would go down. That's good for consumers, but not so great for farmers. So there's that trade-off. In global value chains, the buyers are often large exporting firms. So you have the opportunity of creating forms of vertical coordination, contract farming, provision of credit and technical assistance, which is possible, but not as easy when you're talking about a domestic commodity like maize or sorghum, where the buyers are just small-scale traders, and they're not big enough really to organize some sort of provision of credit or technical assistance. Okay, finally, you have greater scope for increasing the farmer's price by improving quality, because consumers in foreign markets often were willing to pay a higher price for higher quality. So the challenge is finding out what higher quality means and how to provide that to the international. Okay, but on the other hand, there are some challenges with global value chains. These same quality and quantity requirements may limit participation to larger farmers or farmers with more resources. If exporters, say, insist on certain types of methods or certain volume of production or certification of organic production, that's not easy for a smaller farmer. It may be easier for a larger farmer. Not always, but that's sometimes the case. International markets, that's pretty obvious, can be volatile or unpredictable. Things happen in China that affect the prices of export commodities in Ethiopia or in Honduras. It's also prone to changes in quality requirements, including environmental requirements. As you may know, Europe is imposing new requirements so that any agricultural products that they import, you have to prove that this does not come from land that was recently deforested, that it's not a newly cleared land. So that creates an opportunity if you can certify that, but it creates a challenge because you have to demonstrate that. And the last thing, maybe pretty obvious, this long supply chain complicates the communication of needs to farmers. You know, there's a change of tastes in Europe or in the US or in India, and somehow you need to transmit that information to farmers in Ethiopia or in Malawi, whoever is exporting to those countries. And that's not an easy process. Okay, so let's talk specifically about Work Package 1. As I mentioned, the general idea is to identify and test interventions to improve marketing efficiency, inclusiveness, and/or sustainability of these value chains. In particular, we're looking at things like market information, certification, ways of aggregating farmers to reduce the marketing costs, and things like that. The case studies, as I've already mentioned, are shrimp in Bangladesh, sesame in Ethiopia, coffee in Honduras, and fruits and vegetables in Uzbekistan. We're working with various CG centers, IFPRI, SIAT, World Fish, ICARDA, and I think CIMMIT is involved too. I'll put it up there. Okay, the initiative launched in 2021. We didn't really get funding until pretty late in the year, but in 2022, the real work started with scoping studies and identification of possible innovations. In 2023, we sort of narrowed down the innovations and implemented some of the baselines. And then in 2024, and this year, we are doing the end-line surveys, the analysis of the results to see whether the intervention was successful. Did it increase yields? Did it reduce marketing margins? Did it raise the price that farmers get? And the scaling strategy. You know, how are we going to expand this from a pilot study or from a test to a national program? And so that's part of what we want to talk about today. Okay, Rob already gave this slide, so I won't describe it again, and you'll be hearing a lot more about it. Just one thing I want to mention, that the interventions are in market information and collective action on the part of farmers to reduce their cost of marketing and also to make it easier to receive assistance and inputs. Honduras, we haven't talked about. This is a study of coffee. Basically, you know, different strategies for raising the value or raising the quality of coffee, which will increase the price. Honduras is, you know, sort of a fairly large producer of coffee, but the quality is only average. It doesn't have a reputation like Ethiopian coffee does in the international market. So they're trying to boost that. They're working with three different exporters who are all trying different strategies for improving the quality, giving farmers feedback when the quality is good or not good, so that they know what's working, and providing technical assistance on that quality. They're also addressing this issue of the EUDR, which is the European Union Deforestation Regulation, which requires the exporters to demonstrate that the coffee is not grown on newly cleared land, newly deforested land. I didn't put it on the thing here, but they're also looking at the European market for coffee and, trying to, they're actually going to collect data in Europe about what characteristics are of most interest and hopefully use that in designing the programs in Honduras. Okay, the third case study is Bangladesh, looking at shrimp. Again, there's a test or a study of 3 different approaches for improving productivity and quality. And they're working with the Department of Fisheries. They've already carried out the baseline, and I believe they've already carried out the end line. So they're sort of in the analysis phase now. Okay. So last slide. What are the next steps? One is completion of the end line surveys. I know that's a next step here in Ethiopia. Analysis of the impact of the innovations. We'll be comparing the outcomes for intervention farmers and for other farmers. And dissemination of the results. How do we get this out to people who act on it, who might, whose decisions could be affected by the results of these studies. And obviously, the eventual goal is to scale up the successful interventions and to, I suppose the eventual goal is to improve the quality of life of farmers who are involved in these chains. Okay, so that's my presentation. Happy to take any questions, but